All right, how you doing today, Paul?
Hey, what's happening, Terrell? Olin?
So, give our readers a little bit of information about yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, man, listen, my name is Paul Atkins. I'm from Norwalk, Connecticut. Uh, Born and raised, you know what I'm saying? Went to elementary school here in Norwalk, middle school here in Norwalk. Got into the game of basketball at a very young age. And found out I wasn't bad at it. Had a lot to do with my roots by way of New York City. My mother had eight sisters and three brothers. There were eight sisters, eight girls, and three boys in the family. So every summer I'd go over to the Bronx, where my people come from, and I'd work out. I gotta shout out my man Larry Olin, who's my first cousin, and he would take me different places, Malali's Park and what have you, in New York City, and we were starting to make a name for ourselves, basically, because Larry was well known down there already. But along came me, Paul Atkins out of Connecticut, for sure.
Okay, but what got you into the game of basketball?
I don't know. My grandfather, he was a super down there in the Bronx also, and we had a little basketball goal in the little alleyway down in the building that he used to be the super of, and I recall as a young kid, I recall just playing day in and day out in this alleyway, whether it was with my uncles or my cousin Larry, or we just play every time I go over. So a love just grew.
All right, all right. Well, what happened with that basketball career for you? What did it take you?
Well, again, going down to New York City, running into the people that I did, I would bring my talents back to Connecticut, and it was a difference for the people in Connecticut. So by the time I got to middle school, everybody was like wooed, they were like, wow, this kid, he's not bad. He's not bad at all. And from middle school, I went to they had the Brian McMahon Annex. Our ninth grade was an individual situation. I wasn't at the main building in high school yet, and just made a whole lot of noise as far as this game was concerned. From my ninth grade year, I had the guard skills, but from my ninth grade year to my sophomore year, I happened to grow over 4.5 inches that year. So that's kind of what made people just totally take notice. Like, okay, he's a guard, but he grew from 5'10" to about 6'3". So,
Okay, and from there, what else took place?
well, again, my sophomore year, we ended up playing in the semifinals against Hartford Weaver, who had big Ricky Mahorn at that time, and we did well. We did well, and basically that's where it came about for me, because my junior year we ended up winning the state championship, and my senior year we were projected to win it, but we lost in the semis to a school, Hill House. Uh, but by that time, the folklore of Paul Atkins had already begun.
And how tall were you then?
By that time, I was even 6'6". And for
Okay,
anybody who asks, I always tell them it's the milk that does it. It really does. I was a milk. I enjoyed it. I really did all throughout my life. Still do.
yeah. All right, so, and from high school?
So from high school, okay, uh, there was a telephone call to the newspapers here in Norwalk, the Norwalk Hour. Abe Lemons called a guy named Lou Broderson, and he heard about a point guard that was 6'6" coming out of Brian McMahon High School, and that happened to be me. So I ended up taking a trip down to the University of Texas at Austin, in which I enjoyed. I had a ball down there, and I decided, I came back home with the Longhorns on my mind, so I signed with them. But like other cases, my grades were so-so at the time. So what they did, they brought me down to Texas, but they ended up sending me to a junior college called Henderson County Junior College, in which I was supposed to stay for 1 year. It didn't turn out that way. I ended up staying 2 years because I was watching the Southwestern Conference on television, and I decided after that first year, I don't think this is what I want to do. And I had the option to change my mind because I did come back to JC for my second year. My coach, Leon Spencer, told me, he said, well, it's almost like getting recruited all over again in high school. You can go anywhere you want to now. And so I came back, became second team All-American at Henderson County Junior College. Luke Carnesecca, a few other people came down. I kept telling everyone I was going back to the East Coast. And St. John's was the spot I was supposed to end up at. But at the last minute, New Mexico State University, they got involved. And they gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. So that's how that went down.
Okay. And how did you do down there in New Mexico?
Well, I went to New Mexico State, and they were in the Missouri Valley, which was a great conference at the time. Wichita State was number 4 in the nation, which had Antoine Carr, Cliff Livingston. You had Bradley University, who had Mitchell Wiggins, David Thurkill. You had Tulsa, who had Paul Pressey and that crew. You had, our in schedule, and then you had our out of schedule, which had Texas, LaSalle Thompson. You had Baylor out of Waco, which had Terry Teagle. We went up to San Francisco and played. They had a young man at Frisco named Quentin Daly. Drake was in our conference, one of the top players in the country, Lewis Lloyd. So this is what I experienced, and this is what I loved, that everybody that we played against was either a prospective NBAer or just one of the best in the country. And I did work that year, I did work. This was my junior year in college. But again, it came back to the academics, statistics, which I was not ready for at the time. To this day, something about statistics. I'm not with it. But, I became academically ineligible over there at New Mexico State University. Ended up talking to Calvin Murphy, who was one of my mentors. He wanted me to go to Houston Baptist. I elected not to go to Houston. I elected to go to Dallas Baptist, in which, again, I did major damage at Dallas Baptist, which was an NAI school. But by that time, everyone who saw me at State, they had come to the conclusion that we kind of know that this guy is going pro. My junior year, Jerry West, he suggested that I stayed in school because it was a thought. I was thinking about just leaving and throwing my name in the hat, as far as the NBA was concerned. But Jerry West in the El Paso Times, he mentioned that I should stay in school, and I listened to that. So I finished up my senior year at Dallas Baptist College.
So you was able to get advice from the great Jerry West, huh?
Oh, no doubt. Jerry was, he was one of the people who had an eye on me at the time. There was the Baltimore Bullets. There was the Cleveland Cavaliers. There were a few teams who just, I felt this was my world. This is what I was going to do in the next few years. There was no stopping me as far as I was concerned.
All right. After your senior year down in Dallas, what happened then?
I ended up getting drafted by after going to all the tournaments, the NBA pretrial camp Portsmouth Invitational. After all the tournaments came about, June 28th, if I'm not mistaken, the NBA draft came about, and I was the 6th-round draft pick of the Boston Celtics at that time. I feel because there was a projection that I would go anywhere into the first, beginning of the second. I feel that my academics and me switching schools had a whole lot to do with the 6th-round draft pick. But I said to myself, after K.C. Jones called the house, I said to myself, I'm going to go up there and take a spot, which Boston at the time, the acquisition of Dennis Johnson hadn't come about. Tiny Archibald was leaving. M.L. Carr was supposed to be retiring, changed his mind. But there were a few guard positions open there. So I was drafted as a 2-guard, and I just went up there to see exactly what type of moves I could make as far as the Celtics were concerned.
Now,
And from what I understand,
one of the secrets that we heard is that Danny Ainge gave you a name up in Boston. What was the name that Danny Ainge gave you?
well, my nickname with Danny was the innovative one. He would always, day in and day out, the innovative one. He was like, yo, my man, do that again. It was like I brought the type of skills that were groundbreaking, if I should say so myself, And Danny was impressed. He really was. Dennis, who was a very good friend of mine, Gerald Henderson, he was a bit apprehensive. I was going for a job. You know what I'm saying? Good guy. Gerald's a good guy, but at the same time, he wasn't as open as the rest of the guys. And Larry himself, he could appreciate what it was he was seeing out of Paul Atkins.
Okay, so what brought your career to a halt there in Boston?
Okay, when I was up in Boston, like I said, M.L. Carr was supposed to retire that year. He had made it clear that he would possibly do so. But in seeing the type of squad that Boston was going to have, I guess ML decided to change his mind, and there was another rookie there. His name was Carlos Clark. They ended up keeping Carlos also. He was a guard. So, again, KC suggested that I go down to this CBA team, which was being coached by Dave Cowens. They were called the Bay State Bombardiers, which at that time was in Worcester, Massachusetts. Might have been Brockton. We're going back 30 some odd years now, my memories. But it might have been Brockton, Massachusetts. They had a kid named JoJo Hunter, and like I said, Dave Cowens was the coach. So I went down there for a few, and that's when it was found that I had a malignant tumor in my leg. And that's when life just turned suddenly for me, Well,
let's share a little bit about that, because I think that your story is amazing. We're also doing a documentary on you, but let's give our readers and our viewers a little piece of what happened with the cancer. What type of cancer was it?
The cancer that I had, it was found out that it was lymphoma, which is a very aggressive cancer. There are a few people, Jacqueline Onassis Kennedy, who didn't make it in reference to this cancer. They asked me up there, did I want to deal with the doctors there or did I want to go back home? So I eventually came back to Norwalk, Connecticut, where I felt a little more comfortable. Yale New Haven and Norwalk Hospital, they were in cahoots as far as my illness was concerned. At that time, back in 83, 84, it was still something in which they were researching. They didn't know a whole lot about it. But once they took the biopsy and the diagnosis came to me, I was told point blank period that I probably had 6 months, nothing more, to live. I was astounded by how a man could just come to me and predict that I wouldn't be alive in 6 months. So after getting over after getting over the initial shock, me and my family, I come from a family of God-fearing people. And I got to tell you, we all came together and decided that no man can tell me anything about how long I'm going to be on this earth. That's up to God. So my faith being what it was, I was steadfast. I was steadfast. I wouldn't move. I refused to move. And it was a 3 year process, but God showed me some things. He showed me some things. He allowed my pastor, Reverend Stevens, to lay hands on me, and we all decided, or we all proclaimed, that this young man is healed. At that time, I had taken about 8 chemotherapy sessions and, had become bald-headed, lost all kind of weight. So I looked the part of a cancer patient. But at the same time, I'll tell anybody out there, God has the last word.
Amen.
Period.
Amen. 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 And so tell us, this was back in 83, am I right?
This was 83, 84.
83, 84.
So, 83, 84. So, after all of this transpired, I got a telephone call out of the blue. I was down and out more or less in my mind. I didn't know exactly how I was going to maintain in this life. I mean, I started getting better. I felt that I was getting better, and I received a call out of the blue from a friend of mine who saw me in the City College of New York. He was a coach over there, but along with that team was a kid named Cliff Morgan out of the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. He gave me a call. He said his coach wanted me to come over. There's a ticket at Kennedy Airport if you want to just go for it. And at that time in my life, that's all I wanted to do was go for it. Basketball was not, it wasn't over in my mind, and I thought this could have been a beginning for me, in which it was. So I took off and flew to Buenos Aires, Argentina, city of 11 million people, bigger than New York City. I never had so much joy in my life. I didn't understand totally, but I knew it was a godsend. I just knew it was a godsend. So I played for a team over there called River Plate. And River was one of the best teams. River is a very well-known team around the world, whether it's soccer, basketball, it's a big club, very big club. And just enjoyed myself in Argentina. Okay. So during my...
How did you do in the league over there in Argentina?
Oh, I didn't do bad at all. We ended up in third place, our team, that first year that I was over there. And, I became a well-known figure as far as the country was concerned. Everybody knew Paul Atkins. PA is what they call me.
Well, we did an interview on a guy that came down to Argentina. His name is Tracy Williams. And as he was telling us, he said that he got on the plane on his way to Argentina after his short stint in the NBA with the Harlem Globetrotters. He said that he was going over there believing in his mind that he was going to be the best player over there. And as he got there, he said he saw this guy named Paul Atkins. And after he saw you play for about 15, 20 minutes, he realized he was the second best over there.
Well, I haven't sounded too modest in reference to this interview we're doing, but at the same time, I appreciated that Tracy said that. There is a whole lot of truth to it. I made believers out of a whole lot of fellas over there, you know what I mean? Anytime I went up against someone who thought they might have been nice as far as this game of basketball is concerned, I just enjoyed putting it down. It's just the nature of me, it's the fight in me.
Well, another story that we got that we would love our readers to hear. There was a guy that played in the NBA by the name of David Thorkill, and they used to call him the Sheriff. Now,
Yeah,
story has it.
let me stop. Let me stop you right there. David Thurkill was the sheriff. When I was at New Mexico State University, he played for a school called Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois. Like I said, him and Mitchell Anderson. And New Mexico State, we played them twice. New Mexico State had to travel up to Peoria. If I'm not mistaken, I gave David 26. Why? Because he was the sheriff. And Allen Iverson had a crossover. This is the only way I can put it. Allen Iverson had a crossover that I totally understood when he did it. And I have to say to you that I'm older than Allen Iverson. And at 6'6", I was doing that for years before Allen Iverson was. So it was a baffling move. And whether you were the sheriff or not, it was hard to handle.
Well,
So,
why did they call him the Sheriff?
oh, he was a defensive specialist, supposedly.
Well, he did mention to some former players that there was one guy he could not keep in front of him, and that's Paul Atkins.
And I'm so sure. Raul, I would love to run into all these guys that I've ever played with, played against. It was a fraternity, that basketball thing. It's taken me far and wide. It's the best thing that has ever happened to me in my life, this athletic thing. So just a shout out to everybody. No disrespect. Shout out to everybody who taught me. Shout out to everybody who I've played with and against. I love it, baby.
All right. Well, also give us a little bit after Argentina. What did you do?
Okay, when I left Argentina, I went down to Venezuela, city called Puerto La Cruz. They had a team there called the Marinos de Anzuategui. Now, I said that with a Spanish accent because I did pick up a little Spanish. Español para mí es mi segundo idioma, in which I just said it's a second language for me nowadays. Entonces, so therefore, I played in Venezuela. I played in Venezuela for about 8 months. I was over there, and I came back to the States, tried the USBL, which was the United States basketball team. I played under a player coach named Tiny Archibald. That was in New Jersey. Ended up getting a call to go to the Dominican Republic. I ended up going over to La Romana, played over on a team in La Romana. Came back home, tried the CBA, went down to Davenport, Iowa, and played for the Quad City Thunder. So I'm all over the place now. I'm all over the place trying to get on again in that NBA. But I must admit, I know now in my life that there was a stigma as far as cancer was concerned, and I know that certain teams really didn't want to touch that because, again, it was being studied. They didn't know much about the cancer situation, so a lot of teams just didn't want to touch it. Finally got a call. I left Davenport, came back to Norwalk, got a call to go to Belgium, a city called Ghent, which was probably my most enjoyable time in being overseas. I played for a team called BBC Ghent, Basketball Club Ghent. And at one point in time, I was second in the nation as far as scoring was concerned. I was number 2 in the nation. Carl Henry, Terrence Stansberry, Butch Wade out of Michigan. A couple of heads were over there. A couple people were over there. And again, I did 3.5 years over there and just enjoyed. Left Belgium, came back home, did a short stint in Greece. I went over to Greece. I did a tournament over in Greece and stayed there for 90 days. And this was now, by this time, it's 94. my son was born in between me going back and forth to America. So, I'm sorry. I got to mention that I was on the Harlem Rockets also, not the Globetrotters, but the Rockets. So 2 years went by and it's now 96. This is when I went over to Greece. And I'm in Greece. I get a telephone call. Well, I call back to the States and my son is barely speaking. And he says, Daddy, when are you coming home? And that's what kind of did it for me as far as all this travel was concerned. I decided I can't do it anymore. Can't do it anymore. My son was here. So at that point in time, I started working with the Board of Education, came back home, and I've been with the Board of Ed ever since 96. So
Okay.
here I am.
Well, tell us a little bit of what groomed you, because a lot of players that I speak to from the past speaks about, that city ball, that street ball. That's where you made your bones. That's where you made your name. Tell us a little bit about you making your name in some of the tournaments that you played in throughout the city.
Exactly. Like I told you, it was that killer in me. Our family, who happens to be your family, my cousin Larry, any place he brought me, it was more or less prove or be proven to. You know what I'm saying? So I had to show a little something everywhere I went. And just the flavor of the city itself just fit my role perfectly because I was that guy. I was with Larry Olin and John Olin and my Uncle Duke, and they knew everybody. They knew the Steve Shepherds and the Carl Winfreys and the Hector Olivencias of New York. And I got to meet these people, and I got to play against some of these people, and again, it just stuck with me within. It came from within my soul. I just love the game from the bottom of my heart. And I think that's why I was able to excel. Now, City College, Manhattan Community College, Rucker Park, Van Cortlandt, Dykeman. I'm all over the place now. I'm playing down in Webster. I'm all over the place and just enjoyed meeting different people, playing against the best. Gus Williams down at Manhattan Community College. This was a couple of days before the draft. I had 26 on Gus and those guys. I was playing with Round Ball Enterprise at that time. There are a few of you out here who may recall that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also give us a little bit about when you look at the game today, what do you see in the game today versus when you played the game?
A lack of physical, which might not be a bad thing. When I was coming up, there were guards who treated other guards like a power forward might. There was body language to go along with the verbal contact. Nowadays, I would say, in my 50s, the game is a little softer.